Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Oh, good. We're getting ready to start. Welcome to the fourth presentation of Memory Matters. This one is dealing with caregivers. As it says there, I can't do this anymore. I imagine one or two caregivers have said that possibly at some time. I know I have. We're so glad to see you out here today. We're grateful to have Kelly with us, Kelly G. Loeb. She's been a dementia educator for 24 years. And she said today, for putting up with her, she brought you all kinds of toys and things to use from the University of Kansas Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. So please help yourself to those. I don't think she needs an introduction because we've got her wired now like Madonna. So she can run around the room if she likes, and you'll still be able to hear her. And we're just really thrilled to have her with us today. So I'm going to be quiet and get out of the way. And welcome, Kelly. We're so glad to see you today. Thank you for coming.
Turn this on. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I have a fancy microphone here, so it sounds like it's working. Okay, well, welcome back to session 4. And my goodness, since last we met, we're going to the Super Bowl. Wow, I'm so excited. I brought my poncho today. I feel like it's my good luck charm. So how wonderful. I feel like everybody's in a good mood, or I hope you are. And we're going to talk about some good stuff today. In another version of this talk, this session was called, I Can't Do This Anymore. And the sort of the second line was guilt, grief, and some good stuff too. And not just because I love alliteration, but also because there are all of those feelings, sometimes all of those feelings in one day. And it's okay to feel any, all, or none of those things as you find yourself on this journey of caregiving. If you are not the caregiver, but the care partner or the care recipient, it is also very common to feel guilt, grief, and good stuff too. There's a whole gamut. Another G word. I love it. A whole gamut of emotions. And you will find yourselves likely experiencing any of those and more as you take yourself on this journey. So we're going to talk about some of those things. As you all have come to know by now, we have more slides than we have time. I had a few printed copies of these, so some of you may have been able to grab one of those. Kathleen and Laurel have the PDF of this that they will share, so you'll have the slides from there. And I think we're recording, so all the information will be available to you in one form or another. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. This is pretty much a summary of what I was saying. It's normal to feel some loss when you care about someone who has Alzheimer's disease or another dementia diagnosis. It's also normal to feel a sense of loss if you are the person with that diagnosis. It's normal to feel guilty, abandoned, angry. I probably do not have to explain why you might feel any one or more of those things. And you are entitled to having those emotions. And you might start to feel any one of those things as soon as you find yourselves on this journey. And as you go kind of on this long and winding road of being a caregiver, a care recipient, either or both. So what happens when we have a dementia diagnosis, as we've heard over the last 4 weeks, is I'm going to quibble with this top box a little bit. I don't know that I agree with this 100%, but it says Alzheimer's disease and other dementias gradually take away the person you know and love. The part about the person you know and love, I think, is absolutely true. The part about taking away that person feels a little, I don't know, I might have to edit this for the next group. I don't know that I love that because they're still there. They're still yours. They're still your parents, your spouse, your sibling, your grandparent, fill in the blank. The person is not going away. Their capacity to behave, to function, to be the way they were before is changing. Some of the things that they were able to do are gone, or they're different, or they need you more. So put a little star by that box on the top and interpret that in more than one way. The box at the bottom, as this happens, you'll mourn the person. You'll mourn who you thought they were going to be. You will mourn who you thought you were going to be and what your relationship looked like. And you'll experience some sadness, some guilt, perhaps some anger. You will also at times experience some joy and some peace and some humor and some revelation and all kinds of other things that are pretty normal as we go through this diagnosis. So one of the most common, most prevalent emotions we see on this journey is anger. And I realized standing here that those boxes look a little bit small. So I will elaborate on some of those. But before we do that, does the shape of this graphic here remind you of anything in particular? Anything? This is not a test. I'm not secretly diagnosing you with dementia if you answer or don't answer. I'm just curious. I asked another group, and they said what I was thinking right away. I'm just wondering. Yes, good job. I didn't necessarily intend that when I put the slides together, but yeah, it reminds me of a honeycomb. And it reminds me that, like, the next slide, this isn't going to happen, but on the next slide, a swarm of bees is going to come around and start attacking. And isn't that kind of an apt way of looking at how we feel when we are angry? Um, Anger can include being frustrated with the person you care for or from whom you receive care. It can be resentful. You can be resentful of the demands of caregiving, especially when you have had to take on some new roles in your caregiving, like you're caring for your spouse, and now you're doing things that that person might have done independently before, and you certainly never imagined yourself doing them. You might be resentful of other family members who cannot, for whatever reason, or will not help provide care. That's completely understandable that you would feel that way. And you might just overall feel abandoned and resentful. And I don't want this to turn into us all making a checklist of all the terrible ways we feel. I just want to acknowledge that these things happen, and it is okay. It is okay, by which I mean you're not terrible for feeling that way. You haven't done anything wrong. You're not a bad caregiver. Anything that you might be telling yourself in that direction, know that this is completely reasonable and even expected as part of this caregiving, part of this process. So when we feel guilty, of course, some reasons for that might be, did I do something that caused this illness? And I will tell you right away with absolutely no reservation, no, you are not that powerful. You do not have the ability to do anything to cause this illness. I'm taking credit for all the research that has gone on for the last 25 years. But the researchers have done a lot of research, there's a lot of evidence we have about what we think contributes to the cause of this disease. There is a lot of science behind this, but there is no such thing as you or anyone in particular did something in your relationship, in your lifestyle, in your living that caused this disease. It happened because it happened. You are not part of that equation. You might feel regret about what you've done since you've learned the diagnosis. You might feel regret for saying, I knew something was wrong with you, or for saying, oh no, I can't do this anymore, etc. You might even feel guilty because there are times when you're still able to have a good time. Maybe you have somebody to come in and provide you some respite so you can come to the library 4 weeks in a row for an hour and a half to hear about Alzheimer's. So you balance that, I got away, I got out of the house, but see, I was doing a good thing because I went to hear about this process. So if you feel guilty about that, congratulations, you're normal. You might feel that you failed. Again, you don't have that much power. When the time comes that you feel like you cannot care for your loved one at home anymore, and we very often come to this knowledge as part of this caregiving process that home is a place, right? Home for me is 3406 Benton Boulevard. Don't you all come over at once. But that's my address in Kansas City. This is recorded. Oh no, now the whole intranet is going to know Oh, well, that's okay. So that's one home. My other home is, I'm not going to say my California address, but my other home is in Los Angeles, California. I feel at home in a lot of ways at KU, Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. I feel at home in any library I ever visit, ever. And today, I think for the first time that I've been able to come in person, I don't have to go anywhere after. So I think I might even let myself wander around the library before I leave because I feel good here. I feel safe here. And when we talk about being at home, isn't that what we really mean? We don't necessarily mean a specific address. Now the whole world knows where I live. We don't necessarily mean a specific address, but we mean a place where we feel safe, where we feel loved, we feel familiar, where everything feels protective of us. And when that changes for us, when we cannot have that person be at that place, and we have to find a new home, like a long-term care facility, we might feel about having to make that transition. And that's okay. So the thing about guilt is that it's reasonable, it's understandable, you're not doing anything wrong, but it does sometimes get in the way. It keeps us from making decisions that would be supportive. So we might feel guilty that the time has come to think about some more supportive care, like a long-term care facility. If we're feeling guilty about that, it might slow down our progress and change the course of where we need to be going. And if we spend too much time saying, "Oh, I'm such a terrible person for making this decision," as part of this caregiving process, then our quality of life is going to decline, and so will that of the person that we are caring for. And sometimes the best thing we can remind ourselves of is that what we did, what we are doing, what we will continue to do, what we have done for our loved ones has really made a difference in the last days of our loved ones. In the last days, we don't know when those are coming, but as this disease progresses, no matter where we are in the journey. Have I talked about the movie Why with you all? Has anybody seen the movie Why? I should have brought you some flyers about that. I'll have to update something. I'll have to send the link to Laurel and Kathleen. So the movie Why is a documentary that KU Alzheimer's Disease Center put together. Gosh, I think it was right before I started the job. So sad am I to say that I am not actually in this documentary. That's okay, it's still pretty good. But they worked on it, I think, mostly in 2021 and 2022. It's 37 minutes long, and it is about the importance of early detection and diagnosis, and then treatment of Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. It includes people who have those diagnoses. It includes some of the neurologists, the physicians, the directors of our agency. It includes, for those of you familiar with Kansas City, Missouri, it includes Representative Emmanuel Cleaver, who has been a longtime family caregiver for someone with Alzheimer's disease. I don't remember that Dennis Moore appears in the video, but I think his wife Stephanie has a voiceover. And then it includes some, I don't want to say regular people as though they're not regular, but some, people whose names you might not recognize. It includes some folks in rural Kansas, which is a lot of fun. So anyway, it's available on YouTube. And it's a really lovely movie that going into, I would advise having a tissue or two at hand, but not because it's going to make you feel like, oh God, I'm so sad. It will move you. I've watched it at least 37 times now, and every time I watch it, I find something that gets me right here, even though I know what's going to happen. It's like when I watch The Sound of Music every year at Christmas, and that's my favorite movie of all time. And I watch it every year. They usually show it like the Sunday before Christmas, and I watch it as though I don't know what's going to happen. And then no spoilers, but when it gets to the part where you're like, are they going to make it? Then I get nervous and say, oh no, how's it going to turn out? And then it turns out how it turns out. And I can say, okay. Anyway, that's how I feel watching Why also. Anyway, all of that to say is I recommend that you watch that. I'll make sure Laurel gets the link to share with you. It's on YouTube, so you can watch it anytime, anywhere. It really emphasizes that if you're seeing some of the things we've talked about over the last 4 weeks and you haven't done anything about it, go do something about it. If you have done something about it and you're in the midst of it, here's some things that will be supportive for you. It reminded me to say something because on that slide before that said you might be angry because somebody in your family has not done as much as you have in terms of support. One thing you can do to encourage them is have them watch this movie. If you've got somebody in your circle that doesn't agree with you about how things are going or might be in some denial or just isn't stepping up for whatever reason. And I don't want to demonize that person because we all have a different lens. But anyway, encourage them to watch it because I think it's a good for empathy and understanding and maybe giving you a bit more of some support. So anyway, and it's YWHY, and there's not a question mark. So it's not why, like some of these questions we have, why is this happening to me? Why me? Why? It's not a question. It's just why. Why you, and I don't want to should all over you, but why you should, why you need to get informed, get educated, get some help. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next page. So self-care is really important. It's easy for me to say, make sure you take care of yourself. Switching from concentrating all of your efforts on caring for your loved ones and making sure you're caring for yourself is hard. We are kind of wired as good humans to want to look out for our loved ones first. But the best thing you can do for someone with dementia is to keep yourself healthy and making sure you're taking yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally. And one really great thing to do for self-care, you're already doing by coming and spending time with me and hearing this stuff today. Ask for help. It's okay to do that. Ask other people for help. And when you ask for help, you'll probably get a much more satisfying response when you ask for something specific than when you just say, oh gosh, I need some help. So I need help. This is really hard. It's probably going to convince somebody to say, gosh, I really feel for you. Good luck with that. But I need you to go return these library books for me. They are due tomorrow. Does Lawrence Public Library have fines still? Fine-free library. Isn't that the greatest? The greatest. But anyway, I need you to take these library books back for me. I need you to go to the store and pick up something for my dinner. I need you to fill my car up with gas. All of those things that are things that can be really helpful for us. They don't involve anybody doing anything specifically one-on-one with your loved one. If you're scared that people are going to say, oh, I don't want to give grandpa a bath, but I'll go take your books back to the library. If anybody ever says to me, the best thing you can do to help me is to go to the library and take my books back, I will do it. I will drive from Kansas City to Lawrence to take your books back to the library. I mean, that is motivating for me. So find your person who will not come and stay with grandma, will not give your dad a bath, but will drive from Jackson County to Douglas County to make sure you don't owe any library fines, even though we all know the library doesn't charge fines anymore. Okay, but that's the thing. The messaging should be something specific. Everybody know about SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, something that starts with an R that I can't remember, and time bound. I never remember what that R is. Thank you. Realistic. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound. Okay, very good. All of that is some fancy way of saying ask people to do something that they can do, that they can be successful with, that's going to be easy for them. What's easy for one person might not be easy for another one, but the point is don't find yourself sitting around saying, I'm so overwhelmed, I have so much to do. If only somebody could help me. There is a way to ask for help. And then over time, you'll see that people say, well, of course I'll do that for you. And then you can sneak in, oh, well, maybe you'll come sit and read a book with dad while I take a nap. Or maybe you'll come take the dog for a walk. I was telling one of our participants, this is the second best thing I've done today. The first best thing I've done today was I went to a meeting And there was a therapy dog there from the Johnson County Sheriff's Office. Um, and the therapy dog did nothing and everything. When I say the dog did nothing, he just laid out on the floor and said, "Okay, you can pet me." And how therapeutic was that for me? The most. And I'm not even particularly overwhelmed or sad right now, but I felt like my blood pressure went because I got to sit there and pet the dog. So ask somebody to walk your dog. Although walking your dog, you might want to save for yourself. But ask somebody to do something like that for you, and then you get a benefit. They get to feel like a hero, and maybe some of your feelings of overwhelmed will go down. So as it says on the screen, when people say, "Let me know if you need anything," don't we all say that to our friends? Don't we all really mean it? And then it kind of doesn't really go anywhere. So have your specific list about grocery shopping, mowing the lawn. You don't have to do that for a while. Shoveling snow. That's probably a big one. But you could say, so the things I need done are, I need my driveway shoveled. I need to do the grocery shopping, and I need to make sure that Dad gets a bath. Which one do you want to do? And then they will pick. You give them all kinds of choices, and either way, whatever they pick, you will win, right? You will get something done that you did not want to do or didn't have capacity to do, and your person who's helping you will feel great about themselves also. Okay, give yourself time to rest and relax. I mean, that is absolutely a thing to do. Has anybody in here heard about the NAP ministry? Nap ministry is something so revolutionary and yet so simple at the same time. I wish I had thought of it. There's a writer named Tricia Hersey who really talks about rest being revolutionary, like literally take a nap. It's so restorative. Do you all remember back in kindergarten when we all had to like take a nap? Was anybody in this room like me and feeling very resistant? I had FOMO, right? I had fear of missing out. I didn't want to take a nap because I felt like some exciting things were going to be happening to me. That's why kids now don't want to go to bed when you tell them it's time to go to bed. They want to stay up, they want to run around, they want to watch TV. I wish that I could get a do-over or a rebate or some kind of, can I have all the naps back that I did not want to take when I was 5 years old? Naps are the best. I will tell you, listen, I've already told you my address on here, so let's just go big or go home. I work from home unless I'm out, telling people things. And I'll say I'll neither confirm nor deny that there have been days when I'm working at home that I take a nap right there in the middle of the day. It's wonderful. It is so wonderful. I will not say that I've ever turned my camera off on Zoom and closed my eyes. Never. I would never do that. But if I have a blank space in the middle of the day, and I know maybe I'm going to go teach a class at 7 o'clock at night, I will absolutely take a nap. And that's easy for me to say because I don't have somebody with Alzheimer's disease at home that I have to look after. So it's a little bit easier for me to do. But I highly encourage you to do that when you can. All right, and here's some other suggestions. Listen to relaxation tapes. You can see how all that is. We don't have tapes anymore, right? But listen to something relaxing, YouTube, etc. Or there's an app for that. Take a walk, try deep breathing. Anything you can do to slow down and take it easy. Is there a remedy for guilt? Can we get a prescription from our primary care physician? No, there's nothing super easy that we can do. No magic formula. We're probably going to feel guilty in some way a lot of the time, maybe even most of the time. But, given the tools we have, we use our best judgment with all the information we have currently available to us. We did the best we could with the information that we had. And that's all we can really ask of ourselves. Okay, the next, I don't know if this is 1 page or 2 pages. No, it's just one, I guess. Okay. The next slide here is from a caregiver named Sally Hill. I don't really know any more about Miss Sally, but she wrote an article or maybe even a book, and some of her guidance to caregivers were kind of a summary of what I just said. I did what I thought was best or seemed the best to me at that particular time. I can't and should not expect any more of myself than that. My choices have been and will continue to be limited due to some circumstances beyond my control. Remember, you didn't cause this. You don't have any control over this diagnosis that has invaded your life. So you do the best you can with what you have. There are not any perfect solutions, and you don't continue to question the action that you took. You did what you did when you did it with what you could do with it. And even if you had picked something else, if you find yourself thinking, oh, I did this and I should have done that, know that if you had done that and you should have done this, you would feel some doubts about that too. So don't beat yourself up about the decision that you made with the information that you had at the time. Okay. Oh, this is the second page. It's just not, the graphic is a little different. More from Sally. You'll have this in the PDF. And here's a couple more. This is really a bit repetitive, so I will move past this to kind of a different direction. So if you are here thinking, yep, how do I keep doing this? I cannot do this anymore. Let's talk about why you might feel that way. Why is it that that's happening? And what are you going to do about it? You can keep feeling that way, and you can be thinking about a plan, which I think maybe you're all doing because you've chosen to be part of this series. So some things that lead us to say, I can't do this anymore. How am I going to keep doing this? What's next? Are some things we've talked about over the last 3 weeks. Behavioral problems that we discussed in terms of resistance, combative behavior, wandering, reluctance to eat, reluctance to take medication, all those kind of physical, tangible behaviors. Those are very often the things that trigger, okay, it's time to do something else. When is the best time to decide that someone should be in a more supportive care facility, like a skilled nursing home, like a memory unit, et cetera? And we'll talk more about the differences between those. The best time to do that is before you get to this point of, oh, I can't do this anymore. The best time to do it is before there is a crisis. The best time to do it and the actual time that you do it are often very far apart. There is no predictor that says on February, I was going to say February 31st, but that's not a thing. On February, what is the last day of February? February 28th, I will that will be the day. We don't have a magic 8 ball. Come on in, feel free, come on in. You can come on, don't worry about anything. No, sorry, come on in. Welcome. So there's nothing that's going to say this is the day that this should happen. It's almost never too early to decide. You won't go wrong deciding, well, things are going okay, and I think I'm just ready to do this now. That is okay. I find it hard to think of a justification for why that would be a bad idea. So if you decide today is the day, that's okay, and you have capacity to do that, that is okay. That probably sounds like I'm going to say, oh, but if you wait until it's going to be way too late and then you're just really in bad shape. I'm not going to say that. That's not helpful. The time you do it is the time that you do it. Very often, the time that you do it gets provoked by one or more of these variables, including those behavioral problems. Sometimes the person with the diagnosis is doing pretty well, considering the diagnosis, but the caregiver is having a harder time. So sometimes the person who is providing the care is having the harder time, and that might provoke, okay, it's time to have somebody come to the house to help. It's time to go live in the nursing home. A deterioration of cognition in either or both people, we know for sure, based on all the research about dementia, we know for sure we start here and we go down one way, fairly slowly, but we go downhill. We know cognition is going to decline over time. We'll echo back to the first week. If it's Alzheimer's disease, the most common dementia, that decline is probably going to take an average of 8 to 10 years, which can both feel like a really long time and no time at all. But it's going to probably be pretty slow. We're not going to see big changes overnight or even day to day or month to month. Maybe 1 year at a time, you'll be able to notice, oh, this time last year, mom was fill in the blank. With younger onset dementias. So when someone is younger than 65, or if they have a different kind of dementia, that decline in cognition can move more quickly. It's going to look different depending on lots of factors: age at time of diagnosis, when medication started. So if we have someone we're seeing some of these issues with, and we haven't talked to a primary care physician or any other kind of physician, a neurologist, et cetera, about some of the medication specifically for dementia, earlier is better. Um, Earlier because it's going to be effective in some way, whether we take it early or late. But what the medications that are currently available do is they help slow down symptoms and they help slow down decline. And you want to maximize this part here at the top, at the beginning. You probably don't want to maximize late stage when this person is so much more dependent on you. Okay, caregiver role overload, probably pretty self-explanatory. You know, I just can't do this anymore. I literally cannot do this anymore, and there's the decision. Role captivity is just another way of saying I can't do this anymore. I'm bound in a way that doesn't work for me by having to manage all of these things for my loved one. Family conflict. It's probably another one that's pretty self-explanatory when we've got some different philosophies and different capacities for taking care of someone. That can often drive. Now, look, it's happened again. What did I do last time? Just wait, Kathleen, the screen has gone bonkers. Ah, there you go. Okay. It's working again. Thanks. Okay, and then limited support. We all wish that we could have more support. We all don't have as much support as we want to have, and sometimes that drives that declaration of I cannot do this anymore. Some numbers, as if you didn't understand this already, but some numbers. Nearly 70% of caregivers report spending less time with family and friends. I think that's probably grossly underreported. It's probably 100% of caregivers report spending less time with family and friends. Sometimes that's by choice. Sometimes you just need a break from everybody. So that is kind of positioned to sound like that's not good. Not necessarily. Um, it could be that you just need a break. But I think we mentioned in at least one of our previous sessions, isolation is a factor in depression and in declining cognition. 1 out of 3, 33% of caregivers have symptoms related to depression. That's a no-brainer. At least 50% report taking more medications. Again, that's a number that probably is supposed to make you feel like, oh no, more medications, that's bad. It isn't necessarily. Your average Medicare beneficiaries, remember your Medicare beneficiaries are 65 or more in most cases. Your average Medicare beneficiary, no matter what diagnosis they have, even if the diagnosis is just being 65, your average person 65 and older takes 7 medications every day. Some of you are thinking, oh, let's see, what number am I at? Don't, this is not a contest. But know that half of caregivers report that they take more medications. What we sort of interpret from that is they take more medications because they're having more stuff going on. They might be increasing things like chronic pain or depression or anxiety, or they just have a need for more medications. And we want to pay attention to that. Balance that with, isn't it great that we have medications that can address some of our stuff? That might be another way to spin it. Nearly 75% report that they haven't been to the doctor as often as they should. We know that there are lots of reasons for that. That might not have a whole lot to do with our physical health, but might have to do with things like access, transportation, time. What am I going to do with my loved one while I go to the doctor? If one of us gets to go to the doctor, it's going to be the other one. It's not going to be me. Some of us might say that. And 40% report that caregiving means they don't have to work or they're not able to work as often, which again is not necessarily, that might be intentional. That's not necessarily a negative thing. It does have an economic impact. So lots of times, some of these, the things that contribute to these statistics mean it is time for us to make a change in the way that we are providing care for our loved one. When we don't ask for help, the risk of depression increases, the risk of abusive care increases. Abusive care, probably something that comes to mind for most of you is something like physical abuse or maybe even financial exploitation. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I think nobody in this room would do something like that. I don't think most people are probably thinking, oh, I'm going to be a terrible person and start beating my loved one up. Although, if you do think that sometimes in the dark corner of your mind, that's okay. Well, maybe not okay. That's understandable. Keep it inside. Maybe talk to your therapist about it. Don't actually act on it, but know that if it occurs to you, oh, I'm really frustrated. We get it. Okay. Abuse is not abuse is not great. It's not always intentional. Sometimes abuse comes in the form of self-neglect. And what do I mean by that? That previous slide. I don't have time to go to the doctor. I got to take care of my loved one. I'm not going to go to the doctor. I'm not going to take this medicine. I can't afford it. I don't have time to go to the pharmacy. And so here I am. So sometimes that happens out of no intent, no malintent, on the part of the caregiver, but it does happen. We don't want that to happen. When I say it's okay to happen, I don't mean okay like, yo, fine. I mean, we recognize that it happens. We want to get to a point before that actually happens. When we don't ask for help, of course, we have an increase of depression and behavioral challenges in the person with the disease, and the increased risk of earlier placement. Put a little star after that last one because I want to make sure we know that there's no particular timeline. There's no, I might decide to place my loved one on this day and someone else picks a different day, and not one of us is better or righter than the other one. But earlier placement might mean spending more money that we weren't necessarily prepared to spend. Earlier placement might mean my loved one is in a different place, and that's going to be hard for them, and it's going to be hard for me, and there are going to be some consequences to that. We could avoid a lot of this if we go back 2 or 3 slides to please ask somebody for help. Ask for help on things like returning library books. Also, ask for things like, help me manage my finances. Can you pay for 1 day of respite? Can you buy groceries? Can you help me with GoodRx to find out if I can spend less money on one of these drugs? Ask for help with what we determine or deem to be small things, but also ask for help for big things too. That is okay. Okay, let's see. How am I doing? About 19 out of 37. Okay. And 209. Okay. Why don't we ask for help? Because we think we have to have a stiff upper lip, because we're responsible people, because we can take care of ourselves. We don't need any help, because we've made a promise to our loved one that I will always let you be at home, right? I mean, to the extent that any of us sit down and talk with our loved ones about what we might want to do in terms of long-term care, some of us might have actually said the words, I promise I will never put you in a nursing home. Lots of us have not ever had that conversation. Guess what? I've been doing Alzheimer's education, like Laurel said, for 24 years. I've had 2 grandmothers with Alzheimer's disease. I have not sat down and talked to my parents about what their plan is. My plan is that they're not going to get Alzheimer's disease. That's a good plan, don't you think? Our plan for their parents, each of their mothers, was for them not to get Alzheimer's disease. That did not work out so well. So far, my parents are, like I've told you before, they're doing great. I have no reason to think that I have to have a conversation with them. And I am standing here running my mouth at you all saying, sit down and have a conversation. And I have not done it myself. We've talked a little bit about, I'm an only child, so everything is mine and everything is mine. Like, I get everything, but I will also have the responsibility of everything. So on the one hand, I don't have siblings I'm going to have to fight it out with, but I also am not going to be able to delegate to sister, brother, whoever, about what has to happen. So don't be like me. Think about what your plan might be, and I'll try to do the same. Money fears are a very real barrier. Nursing home care is expensive. I think we've got some information coming up on that on another slide. But even if we are not making promises like, I'll never put you in a nursing home, the reality is we might not be able to. even if we think that's what's best, because nursing homes are very expensive. We don't ask for help because we don't know what to ask. We don't know who to ask. We don't know where to go. You will not be able to say that after we're done today. Um, we might live somewhere where there are not resources available. I had a call from a young woman this week who I had met last summer at a program at her church. And it's probably said a lot of this stuff. And she called me this week and she said, I was at your talk this summer and I need to talk to you now because my grandmother is 93 and she has Alzheimer's and I need to know what to do with her. And I thought, oh, great. I'm so glad you called. And she said, she doesn't live here in Kansas City. And I said, that's okay. Tell me her zip code and I'll tell you exactly where to call. I'm feeling like I got my Wonder Woman costume on, right? So she tells me her zip code, and it is a zip code in a tiny town in Louisiana. Um, and when I went to my usual toolbox to find out what can they do for this woman, the first result I got on a very reliable website was no resources available. And I promised her, there's something out there for you. But the first resource said, I can't find this. So I thought, did I put in the wrong zip code? Did it spell something wrong? What is happening? So I went back and changed my search parameters, and I did eventually find a couple of things. I'm not that sure that they're all that promising because she does live in a little town probably nobody's ever heard of except for the people that live there. I did eventually find a couple of things that I hope will work out. And I told her I'm going to be available. I can tell you what you have access to here in Kansas City, and we'll keep going. And listen, remember, no politics here. I don't know what I'm going to be able to tell her if the things with the federal government continue to go the way they go. And I'm saying that it is political, but it is also because so much of our infrastructure around support is tied to federal money. So I'm saying that because I don't know. I'm a little worried, more than a little worried. But anyway, thank you. That was just kind of like my therapy session. We should just have a therapy dog here for me to pet a little bit. But anyway, so sometimes resources aren't available. I can tell you that living here in Lawrence or this area or close-ish to Kansas City, we have some pretty good resources available to you. The farther out in Kansas you go, unfortunately, that gets harder to do. You all have heard the concept of a food desert, right, where people don't have access to grocery stores and what that means. That's why a lot of resources are unavailable and makes things harder for people. Kansas is one of the oldest states in the country in terms of population. So what I mean by that, Kansas has more old people. Remember, old is over 60. At least it is now. That might change. I don't know. But old is over 60. Kansas has a higher population of people over 60 than a lot of other states. Kansas doesn't have as many healthcare professionals for older adults as somewhere like Florida. You go to Florida and you can shake a stick at resources for older adults because population reflects that. Kansas, even though we have so many more old people, doesn't have enough neurologists, internists, geriatric physicians, social workers to support all of our concerns. That's something that KU Alzheimer's Disease Research Center is working on. That's why we went out to, well, I didn't go, but while some of the team went out to some rural areas in Kansas to try to erase that problem. But it's a very real issue. Sometimes we have, I'll come back to shame in a minute. We might have resources available, but I don't know. I don't know if I trust that. I don't know. I don't feel familiar with that. I don't, I'm reluctant. And that's a very real and recognizable feeling. And then informal supports might be like your sister, your neighbor, your pastor, those people that you do finally take your deep breath and say, can you please help? And they say, yes, I want to help you, but they're not sure what to do. And that might be a barrier. Want to go back to the piece of shame. I mean, there's a reason it's hard to ask for help. We have to make ourselves vulnerable. We have to admit that we need help, and sometimes that gets in the way of us asking. We don't necessarily want to say that our loved one has a dementia, or maybe we're okay with it, but our loved one wants to kind of keep it a bit closer. Any number of other reasons you might be aware of to why we don't ask for help. Okay, so when we don't do this, when we don't ask for help, it is no surprise that our caregivers have a negative impact on their health, including a weaker immune system. And boy, didn't we learn a lot about immune systems over the last 5 years with this pandemic. We are slower to heal from wounds and hospitalizations and surgeries. And then that increases risk for high blood pressure and heart disease, which on their own are not great, but are also increasing risk factors for cognitive decline. So all of these are why we get to this ultimate declaration of, I can't do this anymore. So when we get there, we think about levels of care that are available. And these are in order of, I guess, intensity is the word I'll use, starting with informal at the top left, moving over to the right, and then coming back down to the bottom left and moving over to the right. So informal is where a lot of us are and will stay, always. We do what we can. We take care of our loved one ourselves. We have our family unit. We have our neighbor, we have our grandchildren. We do it all by ourselves. So we have informal, where nobody's paying anybody anything. That doesn't mean there's not an economic impact, though. If I can't take off work, or if I have to take off too much work and I work somewhere where there isn't any leave for me to do that, there's no FMLA where I can maybe take off for a little bit of time and know that my job is still going to be there, but I got to take care of my loved one. All of that falls under the basket of informal care. And like I said, lots of us are doing that now and will always do that. A next level up from there might be in-home formal care, and that looks like, in a lot of cases, hiring someone, for example, from an agency, a private duty person, to come into the home and provide support with eating, with bathing, with bedtime, with medication management, with transportation. There are lots and lots of different ways to do that. In this area, we are right next door to the Area Agency on Aging, right? There's Senior Services, Douglas County Senior Services. If you have not familiarized yourself with that agency, do it. Google them, and call them on the phone. I don't know what their office hours are. They're probably open right now. Go knock on the door and say, Kelly told me to come over. They might say, Kelly who, that's okay. I used to know some folks that work over there. I don't know if I know anybody over there anymore, but take advantage. Every county or parish, whatever system in every state in the United States has access to an area agency on aging, who, well, at least as of last year, had access to some federal money for supportive care like home delivered meals, transportation, in-home care. That's going to change. And I would say that regardless of the current administration, that's always changing. The availability of that is always kind of up and down, but it's going to be like that even more so. Adult daycare is probably not as accurate to say it's the next thing after informal. It typically happens kind of side by side with informal care. And adult daycare is just like, not just like, but it's similar to when you took your children to a daycare facility. Adult daycare can be for adults age 18 or more, who need to be somewhere or whose loved ones need them to be somewhere, typically for a day at a time. Some people go 1 day a week, others go 2 or 3 days a week, some go 5 days a week. They are typically open like Monday through Friday, maybe 6 or 7 in the morning to 6 or 7 in the evening. And they provide meals, they provide activities. Some will provide transportation. They'll come and get your loved one and bring them home. They'll provide medication, all kinds of things. Sounds pretty good, right? It's costly. The going rate for adult daycare these days is probably $25 an hour for 8 hours. So that's $200 a day, if I did the math right. That's not being in reach for everybody. it might only be in reach for somebody 1 day a week or 1 day a month, but even that can be valuable. Medicare does not cover adult daycare. Um, Medicare, I might have told you all this before, Medicare only covers things that are medically necessary. And you might say, well, what could be more medically necessary than having a place for my loved one to be? I'm not going to argue with you, but they didn't ask me. So unfortunately, that's not a Medicare covered expense. It is covered under some long-term care insurance policies. If you have one or your loved one has one, get it out and read it, because you might have some access to adult daycare for, some amount of time. Assisted living facility is kind of the next step, and that's also known as more supportive care. When someone goes to an assisted living facility, they typically can do some things independently, like they can live in an apartment pretty much okay, but they might need some help with meals, toileting, bathing, medications, and so there is a staff on hand to provide that support. Medicare does not pay for assisted living, because again, it does not fall under the threshold of being medically necessary. But sometimes that's a step that folks can take. Lots of times your money or access to money is the determining factor into whether you can do assisted living. Some folks have planned for that long before they need it. Great for them. All right, so then we get long-term care facility. And a long-term care facility is, in more colloquial terms, a nursing home. I remember when I was a kiddo growing up in Los Angeles, I'm an only child, as I told you, and I hung out with my grandmother, who is 54 years older than I am. So if I was 6 or 7, she would have been in her 60s, which was a lot older then than it is now. But still, my grandmother was a very cool person. And part of the reason, a major reason that I am a social worker now is because she would hang out with all her old friends. They were always doing fun things like shopping and eating and playing games, like Pokino. Does everybody know what Pokino is? I don't really know how to explain it, but it involves cards and gambling. Like we'd play with pennies or quarters, and it was very thrilling. So anyways, no wonder I wanted to grow up and hang out with old people all the time. Anyway, one of the things I remember that we used to do was go visit some of the friends that were in what I would now call a long-term care facility or a nursing home. But when I was 6 or 7 in the 80s, we called them convalescent homes. And that just evokes such a strong memory for me. I don't know that anybody says convalescent anymore, but convalescent homes, long-term care facilities, skilled nursing facility are places where people tend to go to them for lots of reasons. The two major divisions are, one, because they have had some kind of surgery and need to go to have rehabilitation. So they've gotten a new hip and need to go rehabilitate from getting a brand new joint. That's pretty serious. And you go to the long-term care facility after that hospitalization, and the first 20 days, Medicare pays for it, 100%. And on day 19 or 20, they're usually telling you, okay, you are ready to go home. And so you probably will agree that you are ready to go home. If you are not ready to go home, you can stay from day 21 through day 100, and Medicare will pay all of that bill minus about $180 a day. This is why some people say, well, I'll just go live at the Holiday Inn, because the Holiday Inn might cost me $100 a night and you get breakfast. But at the nursing home, it's going to cost me $180 a day, and I got to, walk on my new hip. After day 100, and you still have to be rehabilitating. You can't just hang out at the nursing home. You have to be improving. On day 101, if you are still in the nursing home, Medicare says, see you next time. If you go to the hospital for a new reason, we'll start over. Otherwise, you now live at the nursing home and you pay the bill, or your loved one, for example, or you go home. That's one situation where people live in a long-term care facility. It's not meant to be, even though it says right there in the name, long-term care, it's not meant to be custodial or forever care. It's not meant to be your new home if you're there because of a hospitalization. People can also live in a long-term care facility because that's where they live. They can live there for custodial care. If that's the case, Medicare doesn't pay for that. That's not considered medically necessary. Again, don't shoot the messenger. That's just not medically necessary. And that is where you pay out of your maybe deep, I don't have pockets or else this would look more impressive, but you pay out of your own pocket, or you pay with a long-term care insurance policy, or you apply for Medicaid. And then you enter into a relationship with whatever state you live in to pay part of you spend down your money, and then the state Medicaid pays the balance. That's an entire other conversation. But that's how some people will pay for a long-term care facility if they are going there to live. And then lastly, an Alzheimer's special care unit in a long-term care facility. What that means can vary. Sometimes the Alzheimer's unit is the one wing of the nursing home where everybody with a memory problem is, and that's it. Sometimes it's the one wing where everybody is and you have to enter a code to get in and out. And sometimes the nursing homes are very clever and they post the code right there on the wall. Bless your hearts. I can't tell you how many times I've been locked into a nursing home unit because the code wasn't on the wall and nobody knew it, and I had to wait for somebody to come along and let me out, which is probably better than posting it on the wall. Anyway, in the best case scenario, the Alzheimer's special care unit means a dedicated unit, part of the facility where the staff has been especially trained to care for people with Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. I haven't looked this up in a while. I probably said this last time I taught this class, and I haven't done it yet. In Missouri, when I worked for the Alzheimer's Association from 2001 to 2010, there was a piece of legislation called House Bill 603. And it mandated that people who work in Alzheimer's special care unit were required to have 6 hours of training on Alzheimer's disease in order to be allowed to do their job. And so many of the nursing homes in Kansas City would contract with the Alzheimer's Association, and I did the training. This is how I learned all this stuff. That's been more than 20 years ago, or yeah, 20 years ago or more. I don't know what the status of that is anymore. And I'm kind of simultaneously proud that I did a lot of that training and also horrified I did a lot of that training because I was pretty new. I mean, I think I could do it now, probably better than I did then, but also what? And we had a standardized training with good information, but 6 hours. I mean, by the time we're done today, you all will have had 6 hours of training. You can go work in a nursing home in Missouri in 2005 because you have had this training on how to care for someone with Alzheimer's disease. So the levels of care that people get vary in some very concrete ways and in some very somewhat objective, somewhat subjective ways. Know that most people are probably in the informal or in-home formal level of care. Only about 5% of people in the United States who are 65 and more live in a nursing home. 5%. Not a whole lot. Probably not as many as you might have thought. Most people live at home. The main reason for that is finances and this promise that we've often made. I will never put you in a nursing home. People say that like it's just easy. Like, I hate to tell you if you're thinking that you can just go home today. I'm just going to pick you because you're close. Go home and say, guess what, Mom? I've decided I'm putting you in a nursing home. It's time to go. It's not that easy. So if you're worried about that, don't worry. Because you can't just decide. I mean, unless you're like a billionaire, I guess you can decide. But if you're just a regular person, like all of us in this room, you can't just decide to put someone in a nursing home. You don't just knock on the door and say, well, here they are. That's not how it works. It does kind of work like that in Guatemala. I spent a summer in Guatemala right after I got my master's degree, doing a research project on aging. And I would not have believed this if I hadn't seen it. But Guatemala, surprisingly, is not the United States, so they do things differently there. And one of my places that I visited while I was there for the whole summer of 2010 was at the nursing home in this little city I was in called Antigua, Guatemala. The name of the nursing home was Cabecitas de Algodón, which is Spanish for little cotton heads. Um, which is very, I mean, it probably sounds a little infantilizing and patronizing, but it was really a term of endearment because it was, for the little old people whose hair had gone white. I'm not looking at anybody with white hair, but it was for all the little old people. And when I say little, I really mean little because in Guatemala, I'm tall. I'm 5 foot, maybe 2 with my shoes on, but I am a giant in Guatemala. Guatemalans tend to be little people, no matter whether they're children or 90-year-old people or 30-year-old men, they're little people. So this nursing home where I was going on a regular basis is Cabecitas de Algodón, little cotton heads. And there is not a structure like this. And I don't want that to sound like I'm saying, oh, the Guatemalans. They just do things different. So anyway, the point I'm getting to is the nursing homes are somewhat like assisted living, long-term care, Alzheimer's special care unit. We were not there. Now that's been 15 years ago, maybe it's different. But what would happen was, and I would not lie to you, but I would not believe this if I hadn't seen it. Just like I said, I can't just come up to you and say, come on, we're going to the nursing home. What would happen is people would, on a regular basis, would pack up their loved one, their older adult, and put him in the car. And on at least 2 occasions, I saw this happen. They'd drive up to the nursing home in the car, open the door, and push their loved one off and drive away. I saw this happen. It was not staged. I saw it happen on at least 2 separate instances. And the administrator of the nursing home said, this happens regularly. Guatemala doesn't have an infrastructure to support what aging looks like. It's a pretty young country, so there's not a whole lot of old people at this point. There's not a lot of education about dementia. I will tell you, just as an aside to this aside, somebody in Guatemala at a nursing home told me the reason that humans get Alzheimer's disease is because Eve ate the apple in the Garden of Eden. To this day, I do not know if she was pulling my leg or if she was sincere in believing that. I don't know. So this is the level of information that is happening, or at least then. So anyway, they drive up to the nursing home, they push the old people out, and they drive on. So all the people just kind of live there that get dropped off at the nursing home. The really lovely thing is that it's very communal. So there's not like individual bedrooms and closets. Everybody can wear any clothes if they fit, or even if they don't fit. You just wear the pants today, or you wear the dress, or whatever. They eat all their meals together. I hate guacamole, and as a Californian, that is a betrayal. I think guacamole is just, ugh, I do not like it. But one of the activities for the day when I was there was that we made guacamole, and all these old ladies and old men were sitting there topping up with avocados, and it was pretty not great, but it was better. I mean, I didn't like it, but if you like guacamole, it was probably okay. But it's a fond memory that I have. And so we did that. In Guatemala, unlike in the United States, there are more men in nursing homes. And the reason is, in the United States, we have more women. Women live longer. Women tend to get diagnosed with Alzheimer's more often. In Guatemala, this is completely anecdotal. This is not in a journal anywhere. This is just what I saw. In Guatemala, we see more men living in the long-term care facilities because, they get put in the car and then they get dropped off. Also, because in the culture there, it's very common for men to have their wife and then their girlfriend and then their other girlfriend. And so as they get older and they need some more supportive care, their wife says, I'm not taking care of you. You go get your other girlfriend to help you. I'm done with you. And this is horrible. The girlfriend says, oh no, I'm just the girlfriend. Get your wife to help you. And so what happens is that the men end up at the nursing home to be taken care of. So to my gentleman friends in the room, I'm not telling you that this is a long-term care strategy for you. But if you've been thinking it sure would be nice to have a wife and another wife and a girlfriend, you can do that in Guatemala, but you might get dropped off at the nursing home. Okay. Why did I even tell you all that? I don't know. It just because I just like telling. It's a fun story. But also there are lots of ways to get care is the point. And these are, kind of putting some boxes around some of the more common ones. Okay, so it is Oh, 235. Okay. So I've said a lot of this, but we'll just go through a little bit. Informal care. Yeah, I've said all of this stuff. Let's look at that number on the bottom. 70% of people with dementia receive this type of care. So see, I was telling you the truth. Most people have informal care. They're living at home. They're getting care from people who are probably love them more than anybody else, but from their spouse, their children, their siblings, their communities, not from professionals who, I have to say, do a lot of really hard work and are definitely not paid well enough for what they do. Nursing homes cost a heck of a lot of money. It is not going to the direct care staff. You probably can tell I have an opinion about that. But that's another conversation for another time. But most people are living at home. 70% of people are living at home receiving informal care. Formal care, it's things like respite care or somebody to come in and spell you, as my grandmother would say, give you a break. They might provide some homemaking and chore services. Meals on Wheels, also known as home delivered meals. I haven't really looked into how home delivered meals are happening these days. Pre-COVID, so pre-2020, the area agencies on aging, and I can speak specifically to Johnson County, Kansas, and Jackson County, Missouri. The area agencies on aging were contracting with culinary facilities to provide a meal, and they would use volunteers to deliver a hot meal every day between about 11 and 1. And the purpose of the home delivered meal was, of course, to provide some nutrition, of course, to the person, but it also served as a wellness check. Are you in there? Are you alive? Are you okay? Is there anything that you need? So that was really great. And when I worked for Kansas Department on Aging, now KDADS, one of the things that I did as part of my role was to deliver home delivered meals on wheels to people mostly in downtown Topeka. And that was really, really fascinating. I saw some really interesting old homes. And let me tell you, people getting Meals on Wheels were everything from people living in these big, beautiful old houses to people living in less than ideal situations. It was a real eye opener. So anyway, that's how it worked until 2019, 2020, and then COVID happened, and things kind of went upside down. And the last I know, home delivered meals were now being delivered once a week, frozen, drop off at the door. They'll knock, but then they don't stay because I don't know, now it may have shifted back to kind of how it was before, but during COVID, just knock on the door, drop off the frozen meal, wear your mask, and go. Which is better than nothing, but it really did take away that eyes on you to see if you're still okay. So Meals on Wheels, I don't know, maybe I was going to say before we meet again, this is our last time, but I might have to look that up just for my own knowledge. I don't know how Meals on Wheels is working. Also delivering 5 homemade, or not homemade, that'd be nice if they were homemade, 5 home delivered meals that are just frozen means somebody's got to have access to a way to heat it up, which makes it harder. And we don't even talk about what they did in inclement weather, right? If there was a storm coming, they'd give folks a non-perishable bag that might have like peanut butter and an apple and crackers. So lots of things to think about, lots of ways that Meals on Wheels can be supportive. I did get to eat a meal on wheel a time or two. One that I had, I still remember, was really good. It was fried fish and greens, and I think it was either rice or mashed potatoes, something. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. It wasn't, a 5-star restaurant meal, but it was pretty good. And they vary from there. But Meals on Wheels can be a form of formal care, as well as medication assistance and personal care assistance, including bathing, grooming, dressing, toothbrushing. Lots of times that really just falls to our family members, but we can do that in a slightly more formal way. Adult daycare, I've told you all of this. Not surprisingly, it usually happens during the daytime. I'm not aware in particular of adult night care, for something that functions like adult daycare, but during, after 5 in the evening, that's probably an idea for somebody to do. Not me, but somebody to do. That might not be, considering the way our work lives have changed, that might be something someone should explore. Okay. Assisted living, again, it's usually a combination of housing and meals and other support services. Some of them do have many care units. When they do, they cost more. And our federal government does not regulate assisted living. That's another reason Medicare is not really in it. And what an assisted living facility looks like might be different depending on whether you're in Kansas, Missouri. I bet in Florida it's, I don't even know, but I bet it's something. And then California, Hawaii, et cetera. So assisted living is yet another level of care. And then long-term care facilities for people who require ongoing care. And they include lots of variables. They usually are licensed by the state. They have to undergo annual inspections. You can look at inspection results for long-term care facilities on the Medicare website. There's a tool called Nursing Home Compare, and you can put in the name of you can search by zip code or by street or the name of the nursing home, and you can get information about kind of what their latest survey results. Let me give you a heads up. I see some of you writing that down, so I think you're probably going to go search that out. There is not a nursing home on this earth, or at least not in the United States, that doesn't have a bad review, period. So keep that in mind. Don't let that throw you off. Paying more money to a nursing home does not mean you are necessarily getting better care. They are spending all their money on the curtains and the fresh flowers and the music. I mean, that might be nice, but it's not necessarily an indicator of better care. That being said, if you're paying less money and not really seeing a lot of, you're not getting a lot of trade for your your low cost discount nursing home, keep that in mind also. But know that they all have survey violations, they all can do better, but Nursing Home Compare is a tool that you can use for some impartial, unbiased information. There are a whole heap of services. Some of them you might have heard of, like A Place for Mom is just one I can think of. But there are lots of companies like that who will be sort of like your concierge or help you navigate finding nursing homes. I think those organizations can be very, very helpful. They do a lot of legwork for you. They've been in the nursing homes. They know the nitty gritty. The one little star I'll put by them is they typically won't charge you to help you find a place, but they are going to get a commission from the places that they visit. That's not necessarily a bad thing. People deserve to get paid for what they do, but they might steer you toward this nursing home as opposed to this nursing home out of some financial interest. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so long-term care facilities usually are licensed. I said that. Medicare coverage, I explained, depends on why you're there, how long you're there, what you need. Okay, and then when we have a dementia special care unit, typically that means everybody with a dementia diagnosis is in one particular area of the facility. The doors usually are locked with access by some kind of code because of the risk of wandering or elopement. We've all seen, unfortunately, horror stories about people who are able to get out of the nursing home and get outside in not great weather, and you can fill in the blanks there. Know that special care units have to be keenly aware that stimuli can produce anxiety or distress. We haven't had any ringing phones today. Remember, sometimes sounds, visual stuff can make people feel anxious. And so special care units allegedly, typically, take special care to reduce those kinds of stimuli. And because we know behavior issues arise, especially as dementia progresses, staff need to have more training. That used to be in Missouri, that House Bill 603. I don't know what the status of that is now, but I get called on probably not as often as is necessary, but get calls these days from long-term care facilities wanting staff to have training. I remember one of the first times I ever did a training at a nursing home when I was brand new to this and did not at all feel confident about what I was doing. I remember one time that they asked me to come out and do a training at the shift change. I want to say it was at like 3 o'clock. So the 7 to 3 people were about to go home for the day, and the 3 to 11 people were about to start for the day, and none of them were happy to see me. let me tell you, if you need to have, if you feel like have too much of an ego, just go to a nursing home at Shift Can Change and try to tell them something, anything. Be the last person between them and their going home. You will not feel like you are a good person at all. And that was understandable. I did that more than one time. And then I finally had to say, stop asking me to come here when people are just trying to go home or just trying to get their day started. This is not a good idea. They're not going to listen. And anyway, that was another, thank you for my therapy session. I'm hopeful that the way that train staff has evolved since then. So keep in mind, it's never too early. Sometimes asking help for your loved one means help for you too. Let's keep your family informed. Recognize that your person that you're caring for might agree with you, might not agree with you, but they might be more willing to do it if you mention that this would be helpful to me, mom, dad, husband, if you would fill in the blank. And you don't ask for help just one time. Ask over and over and over again. Ask the same people, ask new people. Be clear about what your expectations are. Visit facilities before you need them so that you know what you're getting yourself into. Go visit at different times of the day and of the week, announced and unannounced, so you can get a pretty good picture. That's where those places like A Place for Mom are helpful, because they can tell you what they've also noticed. Waiting lists are common. It's never too early to get on a waiting list. Unfortunately, waiting lists can sometimes move pretty quickly because end of life comes for people, and yay, now you have a spot. So sign up for those as you need to. If you ask somebody for help and they're kind of iffy about it, ask them for something else or come back another time. Doesn't mean that you never ask again. The answer might be yes, it might be no, it might be not right now or not yet, maybe another time, and that's okay. If you have to place someone, um, pick your battles. It's not so important that your loved one always does things like wearing a certain outfit that you want them to wear or eating a certain meal. Kindness to staff is really important. They don't get enough kindness and they do a really hard job. Any long-term care facility is going to have a regular care plan meeting with you and the team, which will include the nursing staff, the nutrition staff, the social worker, and they will talk with you about what's important for your loved one. When I mentioned before that you don't just knock on the door of the nursing home and say, now I'm here and I'm ready for my room, even if you are someone who has deep pockets and you're just ready to write a check and go have your loved one live at the nursing home. In the state of Kansas and in any state, you have to do an official care plan. You have to talk with someone from the state, typically from the Area Agency on Aging, and say, my loved one needs to be in this long-term care facility for these reasons. And they go through a whole interview and assessment process. Again, it's not as simple as just walking up thinner. You don't live in Guatemala. You can't just push your loved one off the car and drive off. You've got to undergo a process. Know that you have rights. They're printed and hung up on the walls all over nursing homes. You can also get them online. Know that every state has something called a long-term care ombudsman. Ombudsman is, I believe, from this. I always get Switzerland and Sweden confused. Swedish. I think it's Swedish. Like IKEA. Is that Swedish also? Yeah. Ombudsman is like an advocate. It's like someone on your side. So if you find yourself with a loved one in a nursing home and you feel like something's not quite right, you can talk to a long-term care ombudsman about how to be helpful. So know that that's available. There is probably the information on how to find the long-term care ombudsman on that list of resources that we had at the table there in the back. Time your visits, that means go in the morning, go at night, go in the weekend, so you can get a picture of things that happen at variable times of the day. And here is where I promised you earlier in the day, I'm not sure I've said it as much, but expect that something good can occur. We very often think, oh no, a nursing home, this is hard and sad, and I don't know if I'm making the right decision. But in lots of cases, families say, wow, they're getting really good care, and I'm getting a break, and I know my loved one is safe. And those are some of the good things that can occur when we find ourselves engaging in placement. Okay, so the next few slides are some links that will be clickable when you get the PDF for this. This one's for Kansas City, and it certainly does apply to you here in Lawrence. So we've got the area agencies on aging. I haven't talked enough in our sessions about veterans, but if you are a veteran or your loved one is a veteran, know that you have access to a lot of great services through the VA. We've got the Alzheimer's Association, dear to my heart because they were my first employer. I'm also on their board of directors now, so that's a lot of fun. And a few other things, but I am in the interest of your being in Douglas County. We'll show you that we've got some similar resources for Douglas County. Jayhawk Area Agency on Aging on Topeka Boulevard in Topeka is going to be a great point of contact for you. Alzheimer's Association Heart of America chapter covers Douglas County. The Alzheimer's Association helpline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can give them a call. And then the office that's next door here to the library is the Senior Resource Center for Douglas County. So you can get lots and lots of good stuff from any of those. And again, those are listed on those sheets that you have for today and will also be in the PDF, so you'll be able to click on them. Okay. If you are here, but you have a loved one somewhere else or anybody that might be watching this in the future, area agencies on aging are available across the country. And you can go to, I don't know if this is on here, if you are the person that's writing this down, eldercare, ELDERCARE.gov. It's a great resource. I think that might be clickable on the link there that says find your local area agency on aging. I think that goes to eldercare.gov. So it's in the slides. But if you go there, you can put in your zip code, you can put in your city and your state, and it'll give you a whole list of places that do all kinds of great stuff. There are Alzheimer's Association chapters all across the country. There's the helpline again. And I think I told you all this last week. This is a map of where all the Alzheimer's disease research centers are. And you'll notice that they're either dark blue or light blue states. And if you counted them all up, you'd see 35 states have an Alzheimer's disease research center. And then Nevada and Tennessee are coming. I think they're number 34 and 35. So if you take a look at this map and all those places with the gray, don't. Do I have a pointer here? I'm afraid to touch anything. But anyway, look at where Kansas is. Everybody can find Kansas on the map, right? And look at all that gray space around Kansas. And pat yourself on the back for being smart enough to live in Kansas where you have access to the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. I mean, that's significant because the more we have information about research and treatment and cure, the harder it might be for the access for people that live in some of those gray areas. I think I told you before, California has 6. I think California might be the only state with, I know California has the most. I'm not sure how many are in Florida, at least one, but maybe not more than one. Anyway, so this picture is meant to tell you, wow, look how great it is to live in Kansas. And then you don't have to go too far for the next one is in Missouri, in St. Louis. And then next closest after that would be probably Chicago, Minneapolis, and Texas is so darn big. I don't know where it is in Texas. Probably Houston. It's not that close. But anyway, just a visual of what might be available. But every state does have area agencies on aging that provide a lot of those supports I was mentioning to you before. Okay. Medicare has a new program. It started last summer called GUIDE. GUIDE stands for Guiding an Improved Dementia Experience. What I want you to know about that is that it's only been fairly recently that Medicare covers a lot of things to do with Alzheimer's disease because of the whole medically necessary thing. But last summer, Medicare started this GUIDE program. It's an 8-year pilot project. What it's going to provide is a care coordinator or a coach who is probably going to be a social worker. to provide support for people with dementia and their families. It is going to be at least partially in the form of some money, which is great. Money is wonderful. Money solves a lot of problems. And so Medicare is going to provide some kind of payment on a monthly basis to beneficiaries with a dementia diagnosis. What is that going to look like? Respite care, adult daycare, maybe bathing help, transportation help. It's still kind of in progress. I'm not sure what it's going to look like here in Kansas or Missouri yet, but it's coming. And when I find out more, we'll let you know. People do have to have a dementia diagnosis to participate. They have to have original Medicare as opposed to a Medicare Advantage plan. If you don't know the difference about that, ask me later and I'll tell you. They cannot be living in a long-term care facility because the idea is once you live in a long-term care facility, you're probably getting all your needs met that way. And they cannot be in hospice care, which is end-of-life care. But it's exciting. It's coming. It's about time Medicare realized that we can throw some money at supporting people that's not just about medication and hospitalization and equipment. So stay tuned. We're going to learn more about that. Aha, I did have why in here. So when you get the PDF, you'll be able to click on that link for why and watch the movie. It's 37 minutes. It's beautiful. I will say you'll like it, but you don't really like it, but it's helpful and it's moving and it will leave you feeling, I think, hopeful. So take a look at that. And then, last slide. Thank you for coming. All my contact information is there. If you want to sign up to get the newsletter that we have at KU and get an email every week with great information in it, I write it. You can sign up at Join My Alliance. We have several versions. We have one for the general public. We have one for people with dementia. We have one in Spanish. And we have one for families with Down syndrome. Did I tell you all? People who have Down syndrome have nearly 100% chance of having Alzheimer's disease. That's fairly new information. We did not know that 20 years ago. We know that Down syndrome is having an extra copy of chromosome 21. And when people have an extra copy of chromosome 21, one of the consequences of that, we especially see it in people with Down syndrome, is precocious aging or aging more quickly. And who remembers from week 1, Alzheimer's disease is not a normal part of aging, but aging is the biggest risk factor for Alzheimer's. Those two things can be true. So when people age more quickly, as they do in Down syndrome, incidence of Alzheimer's disease increases. The good news is that we have a study underway right now at KU for a possible vaccine for Alzheimer's disease in people with Down syndrome. Very exciting. Once we figure out kind of how it works in that population, we might be able to say, a vaccine for everybody with Alzheimer's. We are not there yet, but it's coming. It's absolutely coming. So we have some special programming for people with Down syndrome. So you can visit our website at kualzheimers.org. You can contact me. There's my phone number. I'm so glad I'm so glad we had this time together. Isn't that a song? So glad we had this time together. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for cleaning off that table. It's looking real good over there. If there was something on that table that you didn't get and you want, tell me and I probably can get one for you. I left some things with Laurel in the library that people can borrow. We can do this another time. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions? This is her last
This is
visit
the
with us.
last time.
So if you
My
want to,
Fridays will be so different now. The year is different. What a great start to the year. Thank you. Any questions? Anything you were hoping to hear?
Oh.
Yes. Support groups. Yes. 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 I can't believe I didn't. Yes, thank you for saying that. Yes, there's a heck of a lot of support groups. I even facilitate one of them. So if you go to the KU Alzheimer website and you click on, I think it's community outreach maybe, it'll be real easy to find. You can find a list of support groups that meet in person and on Zoom. You can also go to the Alzheimer's Association website, alz.org, same thing, in-person and virtual support groups. Tons of them for people with the disease, people who are caring for someone with the disease, for Lewy body, for frontotemporal dementia, all kinds. Yes, support groups I gotta update my slides. I can't believe that wasn't like in big flashing letters. Go to a support group. Please go to a support group. They are amazing. Yeah. Okay. Any other things?
Well, before you leave, hang on. Laurel has got a
The
little
voice coming from the
presentation.
sky.
I know. Here, hang on. Let me give you the map.
We have really enjoyed, Kelly. I feel
Oh,
sort of like,
yeah.
remember at the end of the choir program,
It's
you went to the
empty.
director and gave him something. But we really are indebted to you for sharing
Oh,
with
look,
us.
we match my outfit.
And we weren't sure if she needs
exciting.
more caffeine.
Yes, because can you imagine me with caffeine?
But I hope it's not happening here.
Thank you. Wow. Oh, I'm going to have a good time with this. Thank you. How beautiful these are.
Thank you so much.
Wow. You're
And-
so welcome, everybody.
Okay, and
Thank
thank you for
you.
being
Thank you,
here.
everyone. Feel free to holler at me. if
We're
you
in
want.
this thing together.
Yes,
Let's take care of each other.
that's right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to take this off, or I'll turn it off. Then I'll take it off.